Hi, everybody, and welcome back to session 2 of The Life of Jesus in You. Now, in this session, we're going to talk about Jesus' temptation and what that means for the temptations we experience. We're going to look at why was Jesus tempted, what did he do when he was tempted, and what does it mean for us? We learn a lot of things about temptation and about how to overcome it by looking at the life of Christ. One of the things we learn is this: it's not a sin to be tempted. Did you know that? It's not a sin to be tempted. The sin is in how you respond to the temptation. But it's not a sin to be tempted because Jesus was tempted, yet he never sinned. In fact, the Bible tells us this: Jesus was tempted in every way just as we are, yet was without sin. Hebrews 4:15. The Bible also says because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he's able to help those who are being tempted. Hebrews 2:18. Now listen, because Jesus was tempted, he can truly empathize with us when we're tempted. God will never get angry with you when you're going through temptation. He's not going to scold you. He's not going to blame you. He wants to help you, and he's never going to give up on you because God understands what temptation's like. Now, another lesson we learned from the temptation of Jesus is that there will never be a time in your life when you outgrow it. You'll never outgrow temptation. This is a myth. Some people think that if I were just more spiritually mature, then I wouldn't be tempted anymore. But that's just not true. Jesus was the most spiritually mature person who ever lived. In fact, he was perfect. But even he was tempted. You see, temptation is not a sign of weakness. Get this through your head. It's a sign that you're a threat to the devil. Now, there's a third lesson we can learn from Jesus' temptation, and it's this: after a spiritual high, you can always expect a spiritual test. After a spiritual high, you can always expect a spiritual test. The Bible tells us in Luke chapter 4 that immediately after his baptism, which we looked at in our first session, that's a spiritual high, it says this: Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan, where he'd been baptized by John in the Jordan River, and he was led of the Spirit into the desert, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. Now, after this spiritual high of his baptism came a spiritual test. After every mountaintop, there's a valley.